Hello everyone, this is a continuation of the previous presentation. Remember our focus, our topic is Research Identity and Conceptualization. And in the first presentation, which we call Lecture Series 1, we looked at Conceptualization and Constructs. For Lecture Series 2, we were looking at research frameworks and measurements. And for us to discuss research frameworks and measurements, we'll be looking at theoretical framework in its entirety and its evaluation. We'll be asking a question, what is the role of theory in research? We'll be looking at the formulation of theoretical framework as well as conceptual framework. We'll be looking at the levels of measurement needed in doing the research and the quality of measurement needed. And finally, we'll be talking about validity of what we have done. So the focus for this lecture 2 series is on the application of appropriate research constructs to your thesis writing, and to construct a flowchart of a thesis conceptualization. Now, what do we mean by theoretical conceptualization? It's an idea or set of ideas which explains something about life. It's something that describes the natural world. It's a principle used in clarifying a phenomenon. It's an abstraction sometimes which summarizes and explains a specific phenomenon. While on the other hand, concept is a phenomenon that we observed, and on which the observer agrees. Remember, we talked about concepts, conceptualization, and measurement of concepts in the previous presentation. These ideas, concept and phenomena, are mental images and ideas which relate to objects that share common properties. So you have to be careful in trying to identify your concepts and how you want to conceptualize it within your thesis writing. Now, how do we evaluate theories we choose? We'll be looking at the explanatory value. Does it help you understand what you want to do? Or are you looking at the predictive value of the theory that you've taken upon? Can you use it to predict outcomes? Or are you looking at the application value? How does it tell you what to do? So whichever theoretical framework the work is going to be based on must either be giving you an explanatory value, or giving you a predictive value, or giving you an application value. Now the second question is the how of this evaluation. Is it empirically verifiable? That is to say, when you evaluate the research supporting the theory, or could it lead to unethical treatment if you're evaluating the theory from an ethical perspective? Or does it fit with other knowledge, or is it the best suitable alternative? This occurs when you are comparing this theory with other competing theories. And finally, is the theoretical framework you've chosen useful or not? This has to do with evaluating the applicability of the theory to further situations, or to clear situations, or to the natural world or experiments you want to do. Now, what is the linkage between theory and research? This is an important point to elaborate upon. And what do you need to understand here? Here you are looking at the research questions of the study. You are looking at the theory, which the study is focused on. You are looking at the evidence you've gathered, and you are looking at the methods that you want to use in explaining what is going on. And when you talk about the research questions, you are looking at, again, the problems and the concept definitions we've been talking about. You are looking at areas for further research. When you are looking at the theoretical side, you are looking at a framework for understanding or explaining patterns or relationships. When you're looking at the evidence, you're looking at the data generated and the relevance to the research questions. And when you're looking at the methods, you're looking at the techniques that can be used in solving the problem. So the critical point here is, for empirical studies, what has been done in this area before now? Who is doing what? Now, there are 3 ways of thinking about the previous diagram that I've shown. 3 ways to think about the role of theory in research. The first way, the first point, is to look at theory as a paradigm. Does it reinforce your original research design idea? The second way to look at it again is to look at theory as a lens. Does it inform your understanding of the phenomenon under examination? And the third way to look at it is to see theory as a new knowledge which may develop from your study. Key point or note on this aspect is that research is based on theory. While theory is your initial motivation for research study, the basic question here is, was my theory correct? Will your research aid you in answering this question? Now, theoretical framework dimensions, what do we mean? Here we'll be looking at the basic point and why do we need a theoretical framework? Why do we need a theoretical framework? It helps the researcher to see clearly the variables of the study and provides a guide for data analysis. It helps the researcher again in preparing a complete proposal using either experimental methods or descriptive methods. It makes your research findings meaningful and generalizable. It guides the researcher's understanding of not only what of natural phenomena, but also the why of the occurrence. It provides a basis for the researcher for predicting the occurrence of phenomena, as well as stimulating the research and extension of knowledge. Basically, theoretical framework is a structure that will support the theory of your research. It presents the theory which explains why the problem is being examined is existing. In summary, theoretical framework is a theory that guides the entire research. But how about formulation? How should you formulate your theoretical framework? 6 ways to go about this. First, you specify the theory that you are using as a foundation of the study. You mention the protagonists of the theory. You cite the main points emphasizing the theory. You support discussion of the theory by ideas from other experts. You illustrate framework by means of a diagram. And you reaffirm your theoretical proposition in the study. I'll take it again. 6 ways to enable you formulate a theoretical framework. Number 1 is to specify the theory as a foundation. Number 2 is to mention advocates, protagonists of the theory. Number 3 is to cite and quote the main points, the main issues, the salient points emphasized by the theory. Number 4, support discussion of the theory by contributions from others. Number 5, illustrate your framework by means of the concept of a diagram. Lastly, number 6, reaffirm your theoretical proposition in the study. Now, what is the role of concept research? It helps you to do a proper interpretation of the subject. It helps you observe similarities and differences and helps you to make a value-based judgment. It helps you to stay on knowledge cutting edge, which supports evidence-based analogy for the researcher. How do we define conceptual framework? According to Myers and Huberman, 1994, page 18, explains either graphically or in a narrative form the main themes to be studied. And according to them, the key factors, concepts of variables, and the presumed relationships among them. So you're looking at the key factors in the conceptual design. You're looking at concepts or the variables involved. And you're also looking at the presumed relationship among them. Conceptual framework is like a process that involves mapping out or visualizing theoretical threads to form some diagrammatic representation of interrelatedness. It describes and explains the concept to be used in the study, their relationships with each other, and how they are to be measured. Simply put, conceptual framework helps the researcher to have an understanding of where the person is going to while starting the work. 3 points to note. This is the researcher's own position on the problem. Number 2, it's an adaptation of a model you find in previous work or a modification done by the researcher. Number 3, it helps to show the relationship of the different constructs that the researcher wants to explore or investigate in the study. What dynamics do we look at? How do we develop conceptual frameworks? We follow 5 main steps. Number 1 is to recognize the relevant concepts. Number 2 is to describe those concepts. Number 3 is to operationalize the concepts. Number 4 is to identify any moderating or intervening variable. And finally, number 5 is to recognize the relationship between variables. The other side of the coin, how should a framework now be formulated? You quote the conceptual paradigm. The second stage is to identify the variables. The third stage is to point out the dependent and intervening variables, and lastly, indicate the part of the study. Now, this diagram shows, is an example of what a conceptual design, conceptual framework looks like. According to O'Connor, ROC, and Locke, MK, The Psychology of Societal Behavior, 2014, the diagram shows you the different concepts, shows you the constructs, shows you the variables, shows you the pathway, and the likely conclusions to be gotten from the study. We have usefulness and we have limitations of conceptual frameworks. What are the uses? What are the usefulness of conceptual framework? It helps us to move beyond description of what is to explanations of why and how. It's a means of setting out our explanation in defining and making sense of the data that flow from our research question. It's a filtering tool. It's a reference point, and it shows the boundaries of the work for the researcher so that you don't go beyond the boundaries. But you have two drawbacks to it. It's influenced by the initial bias of the researcher and the ongoing bias of the researcher and limitations of how we construct a conceptual framework. Nonetheless, there's a solution to it. We need to revisit the conceptual framework, particularly at the end, when evaluating the work before submitting your thesis. Measurement hierarchy. How do we measure variables? From the weakest to the strongest. You have nominal variables, you have ordinal variables, you have interval variables, and you have variables that we call ratio. And you can see from the diagram that the nominal, ordinal, interval ratio move from the weakest to the strongest point. What do we mean by nominal and ordinal measurements for variables? Nominal variables. These variables consist of groupings that are non-ordered. For example, when you say race or ethnicity, the variables do not suggest any ordering of the case involved. But when you talk about ordinal, they are categorical. And you can say that some categories are higher than others. However, you cannot measure again the distance between categories, only which is higher or lower. Interval and ratio measurements. Interval variables. Variables of this type are called scalar or index variables in the sense that they provide a scale or index that allows you to measure between levels. Ratio. Variables similar to interval level, they can measure the distance between 2 points but can do so in absolute terms. How do we determine the quality of measurement? The basic point to note here that the quality refers to the degree to which the same research technique applied again to the same object or subject will give you the same result, but you must note 2 points. A measure can be reliable but inaccurate. A measure can be invalid because of bias in the measure or in the data collector or the coding mechanism. Validity. We have 4 types of validity. Phase validity, which is related to what we're interested in finding out. Predictive validity, which is a measure of prediction of some external benchmark. Third one, construct validity, which is logically related to another variable. And finally, content validity. How much does the measure cover the range of meanings we have? Internal validity in this case will address true causes of the outcomes, while external validity will address the ability to generalize your study to other people and to other situations. Thank you very much. This is the end of Lecture 2 series on research frameworks and measurements. Lecture 3 series on the proposal guideline structure will follow shortly.